This is the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, episode 675. 7 ways to pick PD that fits your personal plan this summer. Welcome to the 10-Minute Teacher Podcast, hosted by author, educator, speaker, and mom, the cool cat teacher, Vicki Davis. Well, summer 2020 will need to be one of healing and rest, but it's also a summer where we can take time to learn and level up. On today's show, Danielle Strohmeyer from Advancement Courses is going to suggest 7 things to consider as you design your personal learning plan this summer. Normally, we only do advertorials during the week of ISTE, but because ISTE is in the fall, and with everything going on surrounding COVID-19, Vicki thought you might want to get a jump start on this information now. She's also posting links to the courses mentioned in this podcast, which will be helpful. So grab something to take notes with and enjoy.
Today we're talking with Danielle Strohmeyer. She's a former primary and middle school assistant principal at an international school, and she's a current instructional designer for Advancement Courses. Advancement Courses is a sponsor of mine, and this is a sponsored program. However, all of the editorial content is been worked out with me and Danielle about what we wanted to talk about. So today we're discussing 7 ways to pick PD that fits your personal plan this summer. So Danielle, where do we start?
I think the good place to start is I would look for online learning this summer, be it for health reasons or be it for the experience. Without a doubt, at some point next year, you're probably going to still be using online learning, whether it be in a large capacity or a small capacity. And having experienced that yourself, I think it will make you a better educator because you know what you like, what you don't like, what the options are, and what the strengths and weaknesses are.
Absolutely. And, we did No Zoom Wednesdays at my school, and we did PD each Wednesday. And I think that our teachers leveled up so much more quickly because they got to see how I was teaching and say, okay, I like this, I don't like that. And it made them better teachers. So absolutely, I am with you that if we're going to be teaching online, we need to be learning online at least one course so we know what that feels like. Okay, what's your second?
I would say take a hard look at your strengths and weaknesses. Doing a self-appraisal is always really important. But in this aspect, I would consider both your pedagogical strengths, but also your technical strengths, especially going back to that online learning. You don't just need to know what theoretically works. You need to know how to actually make it work. So looking into designing blended learning settings or even flipped classroom settings and things.
I like what you're saying. You're really saying we need to be practical about it, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. We sometimes, when we're training or we're doing professional development, we get so lost in the theory and the pedagogy, which is great and interesting and important. But how to do it is really important, especially going into a school year like next year will look like.
Now, we're going to mention some courses that we do recommend. And in this case, design and blending learning for student engagement and achievement is a big one because student engagement, that's just like all I've heard for the last month or two. My grade book is like Swiss cheese, as well as the flipped classroom and how we can redefine homework and instruction. And in the show notes, we're going to give you links to these courses that would be helpful in each of these topics. Okay, what's your third, Danielle?
I would say sitting down and really outlining your concerns for your learners in the coming year. And maybe that is helping them do better in online learning. But this has been a hard year, and I'm sure that some of the teachers listening have experienced it, and I know their students have. So dealing with anxiety or trauma, we have courses on those, strategies for addressing student anxiety and helping students overcome trauma, because that's a really hard area in any situation, let alone in a time like this.
Social emotional learning and trauma-informed learning. As we've been going through the pandemic, I've been working hard to bring you programming on the podcast about this topic. And I've had a psychologist on who basically said, listen, all of us are going through trauma. Every single person, every teacher, every student, and there's nobody unaffected on this planet. You would have to be under a rock or something to not be impacted by this pandemic. So SEL and trauma-informed instruction is just so very important. I can't stress that enough, and totally agree with you there, Danielle. What's our fourth?
Some of you are probably feeling like you're on really strong footing, which is great. So I would say to you, consider how you can support your school community. What does your school community need right now? And that's whether you want to be a teacher leader or just because you want to reach out because you're so comfortable in the online space and things like that. Tech tools for inclusive learning. We're all trying to figure out special needs and students of different needs, how to support them in an online classroom. So courses in that area. Another course we have is called Building Your School's Brand. And I think this is a really important concept. It's really about how to communicate what's going on in the school to the community outside and connecting with the community. And so getting that out to all stakeholders is really important. So any form of communicating with parents or communicating with your community is good. And also, just because we're online doesn't mean that the disruptive behaviors, the learning needs have changed at all. So any courses in extending your learning to support your school community.
Excellent. What's your fifth?
My fifth is to remember that you are a priority. And this is two parts. One is, unfortunately, most of us are still being asked to keep up our licensure requirements, even though it's been a really hard year. So don't let that breeze past you or something like that. I know that Colorado educators, for example, have to take an ELL course now for their license renewal in the next couple of years. So making sure that you're meeting all of those requirements. The second one is taking care of yourself is incredibly important. And so maybe taking a course on managing teacher stress or self-care for teachers, because your value is at its best or is at its most when you can serve your students at your full capacity.
Absolutely. Okay. What's our sixth?
Dive into something you're passionate about. This is still learning, just like your students, if you're not engaged and you don't enjoy it, then you're not going to excel as much. So maybe this is giving you a chance to redesign some content that you're really excited about. I just wrote a course called Using Hunger Games to Teach Science Fiction, which is all about teaching science fiction. And it was just great for me to even write it because I got to get back into something I love so much. Or maybe you're really passionate about like bringing life skills into your classroom or something like that. So teaching life skills and financial literacy. Find something that you want to be studying as well.
Yes, because, one thing that they've learned by looking at schools, for a while, it was sort of this technology du jour, like everybody's going to do podcasting, everybody's going to do Seesaw, everybody's going to do this, everybody's going to do that. And what they found is that boredom ensues when everybody is alike. Variety truly does make learning more interesting. So letting every teacher to pursue and bring their passions and their uniqueness to class is just as important as letting every student bring their uniqueness to class because it makes life interesting. So definitely look for some courses to kind of feed that joy or that passion you have, whether it's drawing or music or whatever it is, to bring that into your subject area. I love that. Okay, what's our seventh?
The last thing I would say is to pick a model that meets your needs and your learning style. You think about this all the time with your students, but have you been thinking about it for yourself? For us at advancement courses, one of the big things that we work hard to do is to make our models asynchronous, which means that you can complete them at any time that you need to complete them over a 6-month time period, which I think for this summer going into the next school year is really important. Also consider how many hours you actually need and what you want. Like if you're working in CEUs, do you want smaller courses or do you want bigger courses? And then consider also the idea of taking courses with friends or in cohorts or with coworkers, because community courses can be fun. I think that it's fun to sit down and discuss things with your fellow educators, especially the theory. We don't always get to do that during the school year. And so getting an opportunity to do that in the summer where we can really think about education as a whole is an exciting concept.
Truly, because I believe that the effective modern educator has two things. The PLC, the professional learning community, which typically people define that as within your school walls and having that PLC. And I've definitely got that at my school. But then also having your professional learning network or your PLN and extending outside your school. So if you can find a cohort in your PLC or at your school, that's awesome. But if you can't, look into your PLN and find other people who want to take a course with you and go through it together. That is just that connectivism or that learning that happens because you're not only accessing incredible content, but you're also accessing the professional experience of a co-collaborator, a co-learner in the course. So these are 7 fantastic ways that we can pick PD to fit our personal plan this summer. Educators, I know you need rest. I know you're exhausted. I'm exhausted too. It's a challenge. I mean, this is really one of the hardest things that most of us have ever done in our entire lives. But we also know that we don't really know what the fall is going to look like, but we know that the fall will include blended learning for pretty much all of us and being able to do it effectively. So this is our summer that we need to level up and to learn as well as take care of ourselves. So thanks, Danielle.
Thank you, Vicki.
This fall season is going to be different, but we're not sure how. Whatever happens, online learning will play a huge role in teaching for all of us. And what better way to understand online learning than to take your summer professional development online through advancement courses? With advancement courses, you never stop learning. They offer over 280 graduate level PD courses in 20 different subjects, all self-paced with up to 6 months to complete. Go to advancedmentcourses.com/coolcat and save 20% off each course by using the code COOL20. That's just $120 per graduate credit hour or $160 for 50 clock hours. You can also receive graduate credit through CAEP and regionally accredited university partners for continuing education requirements. Thanks, Advancement Courses, for sponsoring today's show.